In the year 1543, as Martin Luther's Protestant Reformation tore through the very foundations of European Christianity, a dying man in a remote corner of Poland held in his trembling hands a book that would shatter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The book was called De Revolutionibus Orbium Coelestium, on the revolutions of the celestial spheres, and the man was Nicolaus Copernicus. Legend tells us he received the first printed copy on his deathbed, perhaps even on the very day he died, May 24th, 1543. For decades he had hesitated to publish this work, knowing full well the earthquake it would unleash, and he was right to be afraid. Within those pages lay a simple yet revolutionary claim that would ignite centuries of scientific upheaval and religious controversy. The Earth, Copernicus declared, was not the centre of the universe. Instead, it was just another planet, spinning through space, orbiting the Sun, along with Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. To us today, this seems obvious, almost trivial. But in 1543, it was nothing short of heretical. It challenged not just scientific orthodoxy, but the very core of Christian theology, human dignity, and our understanding of God's creation. This is the story of the quiet canon who dared to move the earth itself, and in doing so, moved the entire course of human thought. But to understand the magnitude of what Copernicus achieved, we must first understand the world he was born into, a world where the heavens themselves seemed to proclaim that humanity stood at the centre of all creation. Picture Europe in the year 1473. Christopher Columbus has not yet sailed west to discover the New World. The printing press, invented by Gutenberg barely 20 years earlier, is still a marvel that most people have never seen. The Ottoman Empire is advancing toward the gates of Vienna. England and France are locked in their final struggles of the 100 Years' War. And in the intellectual centres of Christendom, scholars still debate questions using methods that would have been familiar to Thomas Aquinas 3 centuries before. Into this world, on February 19th, 1473, in the prosperous merchant city of Turin in Royal Prussia, a child was born who would fundamentally alter humanity's cosmic perspective. His parents named him Nicolaus Copernicus, though history would remember him by the Latinized version of his name, Nicolaus Copernicus. The city of his birth sat along the Vistula River, a crucial trade route connecting the Baltic Sea to the heart of Poland. It was a place where German merchants, Polish nobles, and Prussian burghers mingled in the bustling markets, where ideas flowed as freely as the goods that moved through its warehouses. Nicolaus was born into comfort and privilege. His father, also named Nicolaus, was a successful copper merchant who had migrated to Turin from Krakow sometime in the 1450s. The family name itself, Copernicus, likely derived from the copper trade that had made them prosperous. His mother, Barbara Watson-Rode, came from a prominent local family with connections to both merchant wealth and ecclesiastical power. This combination of commercial success and religious influence would prove crucial in shaping young Nicolaus's future. The Turin of Copernicus's childhood was a city caught between worlds. Politically, it belonged to Royal Prussia, which had recently freed itself from the control of the Teutonic Knights and placed itself under the protection of the Polish crown. Culturally, it remained heavily Germanic, with German serving as the language of commerce and administration. Religiously, it was solidly Catholic, though the winds of reform were already beginning to stir in the universities and monasteries of Northern Europe. Tragedy struck the Copernicus household when Nicolaus was only 10 years old. His father died suddenly in 1483, leaving Barbara to raise 4 children alone. But the family was not abandoned to poverty or obscurity. Barbara's brother, Lucas Watson-Rode, stepped in as guardian and patron. This was perhaps the most fortunate event in young Nicolaus's life, for Lucas Watson-Rode was no ordinary uncle. He was a man of immense ambition, fierce intelligence, and growing ecclesiastical power who would soon become one of the most influential bishops in Poland. Lucas Watson-Rode had been educated at the universities of Krakow, Cologne, and Bologna, where he had earned degrees in both canon law and secular law. He was a humanist scholar, fluent in Latin, familiar with the latest developments in Renaissance learning, and possessed of the kind of sharp political instincts that allowed him to navigate the treacherous waters of church politics. When he looked at his orphan nephew, he saw not just a boy to be cared for, but potential to be cultivated. Under his uncle's guidance, Nicolaus received an education that was extraordinary for its time. He was first sent to the cathedral school at Włocławek, where he learned Latin grammar, rhetoric, and the basics of mathematics and astronomy that formed the medieval quadrivium. But this was just preparation for greater things. In 1491, at the age of 18, Nicolaus matriculated at the University of Krakow, one of the most prestigious centres of learning in Central Europe. The Krakow of the 1490s was experiencing a golden age of intellectual ferment. The university, founded in 1364, had recently been revitalized by a series of brilliant scholars who brought the latest humanist learning from Italy, while maintaining the rigorous scholastic traditions that had made medieval universities the guardians of knowledge. It was here that Nicolaus first encountered the mathematical astronomy that would become his life's passion. Among his teachers was Albert Brudzewski, a mathematician and astronomer who had studied in Italy and brought back with him not just the latest astronomical texts, but something far more valuable, a critical approach to the ancient authorities. Brudzewski taught his students to question, to calculate, to test the predictions of Ptolemy's Almagest against their own observations. Under his guidance, Nicolaus learned to use the astrolabe, the armillary sphere, and other instruments that medieval astronomers employed to track the movements of the planets. But perhaps more importantly, Krakow exposed Nicolaus to the intellectual revolution that was sweeping through Renaissance Europe. The humanist movement, with its emphasis on returning to original sources and its confidence in human reason, was challenging the comfortable certainties of medieval scholasticism. In the libraries of Krakow, Nicolaus encountered not just the standard medieval textbooks, but Greek manuscripts recently brought from Constantinople, new translations of ancient texts, and the latest works of Italian humanists who were revolutionizing fields from history to natural philosophy. It was during these years at Krakow that Nicolaus first began to grapple with what astronomers called the problems of planetary theory. According to the system established by the ancient Greek astronomer Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD, the Earth stood motionless at the center of the universe, while the sun, moon, planets, and stars revolved around it in complex circular motions. This geocentric model had been refined and Christianized by medieval scholars, most notably by Thomas Aquinas, who had demonstrated that it was perfectly compatible with biblical teaching and Aristotelian philosophy. Yet for anyone who studied astronomy seriously, Ptolemy's system presented troubling difficulties. The planets did not move in simple circles around the Earth. Sometimes they appeared to slow down, stop, and even move backward against the background of stars before resuming their forward motion. To account for these retrograde motions, Ptolemy had invented an elaborate system of circles within circles, epicycles, and deferents that could predict planetary positions with reasonable accuracy, but violated the classical principle that celestial motions should be uniform and circular. Even more disturbing, different versions of Ptolemaic astronomy gave different predictions for planetary positions. The Alphonsine tables, compiled in the 13th century, disagreed with the calculations found in other astronomical handbooks. When Nicolaus and his fellow students attempted to verify these predictions through observation, they often found discrepancies that suggested something was fundamentally wrong with the entire system. These problems were not merely academic. Astronomy in the late 15th century was not just an abstract science but a practical necessity. The Church needed accurate astronomical calculations to determine the dates of Easter and other movable feasts. Physicians relied on astrological calculations to diagnose illness and prescribe treatments. Navigators were beginning to use celestial observations to find their way across uncharted oceans. When the fundamental astronomical system produced contradictory results, it created practical as well as theoretical crises. Nicolaus completed his studies at Krakow around 1495, but he did not take a degree. This was not uncommon among wealthy students who attended university for education rather than professional qualification. His uncle Lucas had grander plans for him than a mere bachelor's degree from a Polish university. In 1496, Lucas Watson-Rode was elected Bishop of Warmia, one of the most powerful ecclesiastical positions in Poland. Among his first acts was to arrange for his nephew to be appointed as a canon of Frombork Cathedral, a position that would provide Nicholas with a lifetime income and the leisure necessary for scholarly pursuits. But before taking up his cathedral duties, Nicholas was sent to Italy to complete his education in the manner befitting a Renaissance humanist. In the autumn of 1496, he enrolled at the University of Bologna as a student of canon law. This was ostensibly practical preparation for a career in church administration, but Bologna offered far more than legal training. It was one of the great centres of Renaissance learning, a place where the latest developments in mathematics, astronomy, natural philosophy, and humanist scholarship could be encountered in their most sophisticated forms. At Bologna, Nicholas lodged in the house of Domenico Maria Novara, the university's professor of astronomy. This arrangement, probably facilitated by his uncle's connections, proved to be one of the most important influences on his intellectual development. Novara was not just a teacher, but a practicing astronomer who maintained his own observatory and conducted regular observations of planetary motions. More crucially, he was a critic of Ptolemaic astronomy, who encouraged his students to question the ancient authorities and seek better explanations for celestial phenomena. Under Novara's guidance, Nicholas learned not just the techniques of mathematical astronomy, but the critical spirit that would eventually lead him to revolutionary conclusions. Together, they observed lunar eclipses, tracked the positions of planets, and measured the apparent motions of stars. They discovered that the astronomical tables in common use were seriously inaccurate, and that the Ptolemaic system, for all its mathematical sophistication, failed to provide reliable predictions of celestial events. During his years in Bologna, Nicholas also encountered the latest developments in humanist scholarship. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 had brought a flood of Greek manuscripts to Western Europe, including astronomical and mathematical texts that had been unknown during the Middle Ages. Among these was a work by Aristarchus of Samos, an ancient Greek astronomer who had proposed that the sun, not the earth, stood at the centre of the universe. This heliocentric hypothesis had been rejected by later ancient astronomers and was virtually unknown in medieval Europe. But its rediscovery planted a seed in Nicholas's mind that would eventually grow into his own revolutionary theory. The intellectual ferment of Renaissance Italy was intoxicating for a young scholar from the relatively provincial world of Northern Europe. In Bologna, Nicholas encountered not just new ideas but a new approach to learning itself. The humanists taught that truth was to be discovered not by accepting ancient authorities but by returning to original sources, by careful observation, and by the application of rigorous reason. This methodology, revolutionary in its implications, would prove essential to Copernicus's later achievements. Yet Bologna was just the beginning of Copernicus's Italian education. In 1501, he returned briefly to Warmia to formally take possession of his canonry at Frombork Cathedral, But this was merely a bureaucratic necessity. His uncle had already secured permission for him to continue his studies in Italy, this time at the University of Padua, where he would pursue a degree in medicine. The choice of medical studies was both practical and intellectually strategic. Canon law required that benefice holders contribute meaningfully to their communities, and a canon who was also a physician could serve both the spiritual and physical needs of his flock. But medicine in the early 16th century was inseparable from astronomy. Physicians diagnosed illness according to astrological principles, prescribing treatments based on the positions of planets and the phases of the moon. To be an effective doctor, one had to be a competent astronomer. Padua in the early 1500s was arguably the most intellectually dynamic university in Europe. Its medical faculty was renowned throughout Christendom, attracting students from across the continent who came to learn not just the practical arts of healing, but the latest developments in natural philosophy. The university's approach to medicine was revolutionary for its time, emphasizing direct observation and anatomical study over the mere memorization of ancient texts. Here, Copernicus encountered professors who dissected human cadavers in public demonstrations, challenging the anatomical theories of Galen that had dominated medical education for over a millennium. He witnessed the emergence of a new empirical approach to natural philosophy that would later influence his own astronomical work. If ancient authorities could be wrong about the structure of the human body, might they not also be wrong about the structure of the cosmos? During his time at Padua, Copernicus also deepened his study of Greek, gaining access to astronomical texts in their original language rather than through Latin translations that often distorted or omitted crucial details. He read Ptolemy's Almagest in Greek, discovering subtleties and ambiguities that had been lost in medieval Latin versions. More importantly, he encountered the works of other ancient astronomers whose ideas had been suppressed or ignored by later authorities. It was probably during these Italian years that Copernicus first began to formulate his revolutionary hypothesis. The problems with Ptolemaic astronomy that he had first encountered at Krakow became increasingly urgent as he gained greater technical expertise. The system was not just inaccurate, but internally inconsistent, requiring different models for different planets that could not be unified into a coherent cosmological framework. The breakthrough, when it came, was both mathematical and aesthetic. Copernicus realized that if the Sun were placed at the center of the planetary system, many of the complexities of Ptolemaic astronomy would disappear. The retrograde motions of the planets, which required elaborate epicycles in the geocentric system, became simple consequences of the Earth's orbital motion in a heliocentric model. The relative distances of the planets from the Sun could be calculated directly from their observed periods of revolution, creating a harmonious mathematical structure that the Ptolemaic system had never achieved. But this insight came with a terrible price. A heliocentric cosmos violated not just astronomical tradition, but fundamental principles of Aristotelian physics and Christian theology. If the Earth moved, why did objects not fly off its surface? How could the same God who had created man in his image allow humanity to inhabit a wandering planet rather than the fixed center of creation? These questions would haunt Copernicus for the rest of his life. In 1503, he completed his medical studies and received a doctorate in canon law from the University of Ferrara, though he had actually done his coursework at Padua. This was a common practice among wealthy students who could afford to shop for degrees from the most prestigious institutions. Armed with his Italian education and growing reputation as a scholar, Copernicus returned to Warmia to begin what would be 4 decades of service to his cathedral chapter. The Warmia to which he returned was a fascinating microcosm of the political and religious tensions that were reshaping Northern Europe. As an autonomous bishopric within the Kingdom of Poland, it maintained its own government, military, and diplomatic relations while navigating the complex rivalries between Polish kings, Teutonic knights, and the emerging power of Prussia. Bishop Lucas Watson-Roeder, Copernicus's uncle and patron, was one of the most powerful men in the region, serving not just as spiritual leader, but as temporal ruler of a territory larger than many German principalities. Copernicus established himself in a tower of Frombork Cathedral that would serve as both his residence and his private observatory. From this vantage point overlooking the Vistula lagoon, he could observe the movements of planets and stars while fulfilling his duties as cathedral administrator, physician to the local community, and advisor to his uncle on matters of diplomacy and governance. The daily life of a cathedral canon in early 16th century Warmia was far removed from the monastic isolation that many imagine. Copernicus was responsible for managing vast agricultural estates, collecting rents and taxes, supervising the construction and maintenance of cathedral buildings, and representing the chapter in legal disputes. He served as his uncle's personal physician and diplomatic agent, traveling throughout Poland and Prussia on missions that required both medical expertise and political sophistication. These practical responsibilities might have consumed the energies of a lesser man, but Copernicus used them as opportunities to refine his understanding of mathematics, economics, and natural philosophy. When monetary inflation threatened the economic stability of Warmia, he wrote treatises on currency reform that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of economic theory. When military threats required the fortification of Frombork, he designed defensive systems that incorporated the latest developments in artillery and siege warfare. Yet throughout these busy decades, astronomy remained his deepest passion. Working alone in his tower observatory, using instruments he had constructed himself according to designs learned in Italy, Copernicus began the painstaking work of developing his heliocentric theory into a complete mathematical system. This was not merely a matter of replacing the Earth with the Sun at the center of the cosmos, but of recalculating the entire structure of planetary motions according to new principles. The work proceeded slowly, hampered by the limitations of his instruments and the difficulty of making accurate observations from a single location. Medieval astronomy had relied heavily on the observational records compiled by ancient and Islamic astronomers, but Copernicus wanted to base his system on fresh data collected according to his own rigorous standards. Night after night, year after year, he tracked the positions of planets, measured the apparent motions of stars, and recorded eclipses and conjunctions with meticulous precision. By 1510, he had developed his basic heliocentric model, sufficiently to share it with a small circle of trusted friends and correspondents. The document he circulated, known today as the Commentariolus, or Little Commentary, was a brief sketch of his new astronomy, written in elegant Latin, but distributed only in manuscript form. In it, Copernicus outlined 7 fundamental principles that would govern his reformed astronomy, beginning with the revolutionary claim that the center of the universe lay near the Sun, not the Earth. The response to this preliminary work was mixed but encouraging. Progressive astronomers like Johannes Werner in Nuremberg and Georg Joachim Rheticus in Wittenberg recognized the mathematical elegance of the heliocentric model and urged Copernicus to develop it into a complete treatise. Conservative scholars, particularly those associated with the traditional universities, responded with skepticism or outright hostility. The Catholic Church, preoccupied with the growing threat of Lutheran heresy, had not yet focused its attention on astronomical questions, but some theologians were already expressing concern about the theological implications of a moving Earth. Copernicus himself remained deeply ambivalent about publication. He was acutely aware that his theory contradicted not just scientific orthodoxy, but fundamental assumptions about the nature of reality that had guided Western thought for over a millennium. Unlike many later scientific revolutionaries, he had no desire for controversy or fame. His goal was truth, not notoriety, and he feared that premature publication might subject his work to misunderstanding or persecution before it could be properly evaluated by competent judges. This caution was reinforced by the political and religious upheavals that were convulsing Europe during the early decades of the 16th century. Martin Luther had posted his 95 Theses in 1517, launching the Protestant Reformation that would split Western Christianity permanently. The Holy Roman Empire was locked in military struggle with the expanding Ottoman Empire. The discovery of the New World was forcing Europeans to reconsider their understanding of geography, anthropology, and theology. In such turbulent times, Copernicus had no desire to add astronomical revolution to the list of challenges facing established authority. Yet despite his reluctance to publish, Copernicus could not abandon the work that had consumed his intellectual life. Throughout the 1520s and 1530s, he continued to refine his mathematical models, seeking ever greater precision in his calculations and wrestling with the philosophical implications of his discoveries. The heliocentric theory was not simply an alternative to Ptolemaic astronomy. It demanded a complete reconceptualization of humanity's relationship to the cosmos. The mathematical challenges alone were staggering. While placing the sun at the center eliminated many of the artificial complexities of geocentric astronomy, it created new problems that required innovative solutions. Copernicus had to account for the fact that stellar parallax, the apparent shifting of star positions that should result from Earth's orbital motion, was not observable with the instruments of his time. His solution was to propose that the stars were so incredibly distant that parallax effects were too small to detect, a conclusion that implied a universe far vaster than anyone had previously imagined. He also grappled with questions of planetary motion that would not be fully resolved until Kepler's discovery of elliptical orbits decades later. Working within the classical assumption that celestial motions must be perfectly circular, Copernicus still required epicycles and complex geometrical constructions to match his theoretical predictions with observed planetary positions. His final system, while far more elegant than Ptolemy's in its overall conception, was scarcely less complex in its mathematical details. The work demanded not only mathematical sophistication, but physical courage. Each night spent observing in his tower observatory was a risk not just from the harsh Baltic climate, but from the suspicion of neighbours who whispered about the cannon's strange nocturnal activities. Medieval and Renaissance Europe was filled with stories of scholars who had made pacts with demons to gain forbidden knowledge, and astronomy was particularly suspect because of its association with astrology and magic. More than once, Copernicus found himself defending his observations against accusations of sorcery or heresy, or the intellectual isolation was perhaps even more challenging than the physical dangers. Unlike modern scientists who work within established communities of researchers, Copernicus laboured essentially alone, with only occasional correspondence from distant scholars to validate his efforts. The nearest major astronomical centre was Vienna, weeks away by dangerous travel through territories frequently ravaged by Ottoman raids. Most of his theoretical insights had to be developed through solitary reflection, tested against his own observations, and refined through years of patient calculation. As the decades passed, Copernicus began to suffer from the ailments that commonly afflicted scholars of his era. Hours spent hunched over calculations by candlelight weakened his eyesight and strained his back. The cold, damp climate of the Baltic coast aggravated respiratory problems that would eventually contribute to his death. His hair had long since turned white, his face lined with the marks of a lifetime spent in intense concentration, Yet his mind remained sharp, his dedication to astronomical truth unwavering. By 1530, he had completed the essential framework of what would become De Revolutionibus. The treatise had grown far beyond the brief outline of the Commentariolus into a comprehensive work of mathematical astronomy that rivaled Ptolemy's Almagest in scope and technical sophistication. Book after book developed the implications of heliocentric theory, providing detailed calculations for planetary motions, explanations of celestial phenomena, and philosophical arguments for the new cosmology. Yet still he hesitated to publish. The manuscript sat in his tower room, occasionally shared with visiting scholars or sent in portions to correspondents, but never committed to the permanent form of print. Part of his reluctance stemmed from perfectionism, the scholar's eternal desire to refine and improve his work before exposing it to criticism. Part reflected genuine concern about religious and political persecution, as the Reformation had made all intellectual innovation suspect to both Catholic and Protestant authorities. But perhaps the deepest source of his hesitation was the magnitude of what he was proposing. Copernicus understood better than anyone that his theory implied a fundamental revolution in human self-understanding. For over 1,000 years, Christian cosmology had placed Earth at the center of creation, with humanity as the crown of God's work dwelling at the focal point of divine attention. The heliocentric theory suggested instead that Earth was merely one planet among others, orbiting an ordinary star in what might be an infinite universe filled with countless other worlds. The theological implications were staggering. If Earth was not the center of creation, what did that mean for the doctrine of the Incarnation? Had Christ died for the sins of one world among many, or were there other incarnations on other planets? If the universe was infinite, where was heaven? If the stars were distant suns, might they have their own planets, their own forms of life? These questions, barely imaginable in Copernicus's time, would torment theologians for centuries to come. The scientific implications were equally revolutionary. Aristotelian physics, which had dominated European natural philosophy for 3 centuries, was based on the assumption that Earth was the natural center toward which all heavy objects fell. If Earth was moving through space, entirely new principles of motion would be needed to explain why objects did not fly off its surface. The very concept of natural place, fundamental to medieval understanding of the physical world, would have to be abandoned. As Copernicus entered his final decade, external pressures began to mount for publication of his great work. Scholars across Europe had heard rumours of the heliocentric theory and were eager to examine it in detail. Some, like Cardinal Nicolaus von Schönberg in Rome, actively encouraged him to make his discoveries public, arguing that truth should not be hidden from the world. Others, including Protestant reformers, who saw Catholic astronomy as another example of papal corruption, pressed him to publish as a blow against ecclesiastical authority. The decisive intervention came from an unexpected source. In 1539, a young German mathematician named Georg Joachim Rheticus arrived in Frombork, having travelled hundreds of miles specifically to study with Copernicus. Rheticus was a professor at the University of Wittenberg, the intellectual heart of Lutheran Germany, but his passion for astronomy transcended religious divisions. He had read the Commentariolus and understood immediately that Copernicus had achieved something unprecedented in the history of science. Rheticus spent over 2 years in Frombork, working closely with the aging canon to understand every aspect of the heliocentric theory. He served as more than just a student, becoming Copernicus's collaborator, advocate, and eventually the agent who would bring De Revolutionibus to publication. Under Rheticus's enthusiastic encouragement, Copernicus began to overcome his long-standing reluctance to make his work public. In 1540, Rheticus published his own account of Copernican theory, the Narratio Prima, or first account, which served as a kind of advance advertisement for the complete work. Written with the clarity and enthusiasm of a gifted teacher, the Narratio Prima explained the basic principles of heliocentric astronomy in accessible language while emphasizing its mathematical advantages over traditional geocentric models. The response was sufficiently positive to convince Copernicus that his complete treatise might be received with scholarly interest rather than immediate condemnation. Yet even as publication plans moved forward, Copernicus continued to refine and revise his manuscript. The work had grown into 6 books covering every aspect of astronomical theory and practice. The first book established the philosophical foundations of heliocentric cosmology, arguing that the apparent daily rotation of the heavens could be more simply explained by Earth's rotation on its axis. The second book provided a comprehensive catalogue of stars, updated from ancient sources with Copernicus's own observations. The remaining books developed detailed mathematical models for the motions of the Sun, Moon, and planets according to heliocentric principles. The mathematical content was formidable, requiring readers to master complex geometrical proofs and trigonometric calculations that challenged even professional astronomers. Copernicus wrote for an elite audience of scholars and practitioners who could appreciate both the technical innovations and the broader implications of his work. He made no attempt to popularize his ideas or make them accessible to general readers, understanding that such revolutionary concepts required careful presentation to avoid misunderstanding or misrepresentation. As word of the impending publication spread through European intellectual circles, reactions began to crystallize along predictable lines. Progressive mathematicians and astronomers generally welcomed the prospect of a new theoretical framework that might resolve the long-standing problems of planetary theory. Conservative scholars and theologians expressed alarm at the prospect of abandoning cosmological principles that had guided Christian thought since the time of Augustine. Political authorities, both secular and religious, watched nervously as another potentially disruptive innovation prepared to challenge established order. The printing of De Revolutionibus began in Nuremberg in 1542 under the supervision of Andreas Osiander, a Lutheran theologian and mathematician who had been recommended by Rheticus. Osiander was sympathetic to astronomical reform, but deeply concerned about the religious controversy that might result from presenting heliocentric theory as literal truth rather than mathematical hypothesis. Without consulting Copernicus, he added an anonymous preface suggesting that the book's contents should be understood as convenient mathematical fictions rather than claims about physical reality. This editorial intervention would create confusion and controversy for decades to come. Readers who encountered only Osiander's preface might conclude that Copernicus himself regarded his theory as merely a computational device, while those who studied the main text would find clear statements that the Earth really does move around the Sun. The resulting ambiguity may have protected the work from immediate suppression, but it also undermined the revolutionary force of Copernicus's argument. Meanwhile, in his tower at Frombork, Copernicus was entering his final illness. Decades of scholarly labour, combined with the natural infirmities of age, had left him increasingly frail and bedridden. He suffered what appears to have been a series of strokes that gradually robbed him of mobility and speech, while leaving his mind largely intact. As spring turned to early summer, in 1543, it became clear that his life was drawing to a close. The first printed copies of De Revolutionibus arrived from Nuremberg just as Copernicus lay dying. According to the account left by his disciple and physician, he was able to hold the book and perhaps even comprehend that his life's work had finally achieved the permanence of print. Whether he was aware of Osiander's unauthorized preface remains unknown, but the sight of his completed treatise may have provided some measure of satisfaction in his final hours. On May 24th, 1543, as the afternoon light faded across the Vistula lagoon, Nicolaus Copernicus drew his final breath. The man who had dared to move the earth itself passed quietly from the world he had revolutionized, perhaps never fully grasping the cosmic upheaval his ideas would unleash upon future generations. His death marked not an ending, but a beginning. The real story of the Copernican revolution was just starting to unfold. In the immediate aftermath of his passing, De Revolutionibus entered the world like a stone cast into still water, creating ripples that would spread far beyond the confines of astronomical circles. The initial reaction was muted, almost anticlimactic. The book was expensive, technically demanding, and accessible only to the most learned scholars of the age. Many who encountered it were put off by Osiander's anonymous preface, which suggested that the heliocentric theory should be understood as mathematical convenience rather than physical truth. Others were simply unprepared for the intellectual leap required to abandon 15 centuries of geocentric thinking. Yet among those equipped to understand its implications, De Revolutionibus began to work its quiet magic. Professional astronomers discovered that Copernican calculations, while not dramatically more accurate than improved Ptolemaic models, offered a conceptual elegance that was deeply appealing. The heliocentric framework eliminated many of the arbitrary features that had plagued geocentric astronomy, replacing them with a harmonious system where planetary distances and periods were naturally related. For the first time since antiquity, astronomers could claim to understand not just how the planets moved, but why they moved as they did. The theological response was more complex than popular accounts often suggest. The Catholic Church, embroiled in its struggle against Protestant reformers, initially paid little attention to astronomical questions. Many prominent churchmen, including Cardinal Schönberg, who had encouraged Copernicus to publish, saw no immediate conflict between heliocentric astronomy and Christian doctrine. The Bible, they argued, spoke in the language of common experience, describing sunrise and sunset as they appear to human observers rather than asserting literal cosmological truths. This accommodating attitude would persist for several decades before hardening into active opposition. Protestant reactions were generally more hostile from the beginning. Martin Luther himself reportedly dismissed Copernicus as a fool who wished to reverse the entire science of astronomy, contradicting the clear testimony of Scripture that Joshua commanded the sun, not the earth, to stand still. Other Protestant leaders echoed these concerns, arguing that acceptance of heliocentric theory represented dangerous pride, an attempt to elevate human reason above divine revelation. This theological opposition would prove more immediately threatening to Copernican astronomy than Catholic skepticism. The scientific community's response revealed the complex dynamics of intellectual change in Renaissance Europe. Established professors at traditional universities often reacted with professional conservatism, reluctant to abandon teaching methods and curricula they had spent decades perfecting. Younger scholars, particularly those influenced by humanist ideals of returning to ancient sources and questioning medieval authorities, proved more receptive to astronomical innovation. The result was a generational divide that would persist throughout the 16th century. Perhaps the most significant early convert to Copernican astronomy was Erasmus Reinhold, professor of mathematics at the University of Wittenberg. Despite the Protestant hostility to heliocentric theory, Reinhold recognized the computational advantages of Copernicus's mathematical methods. In 1551, he published the Prussian Tables, a new set of astronomical calculations based on Copernican principles. These tables, more accurate than any previous computational aids, gradually won converts to heliocentric methods, even among astronomers who remained skeptical of heliocentric cosmology. The practical success of Copernican calculations began to undermine theoretical objections to the moving Earth. The generation that followed Copernicus's death would witness the emergence of the first true disciples of heliocentric astronomy. Rheticus, who had done so much to bring De Revolutionibus to publication, spent the remainder of his career developing and defending Copernican theory. He recognized that the mathematical framework provided by Copernicus was incomplete and required extensive refinement to achieve its full potential. Working with improved observational data and more sophisticated computational techniques, Rheticus and his students began the long process of transforming Copernican astronomy from revolutionary hypothesis into established science. The geographical spread of Copernican ideas followed the networks of scholarly communication that connected Renaissance Europe's intellectual centers. From Wittenberg, the theory spread to other German universities, where Protestant scholars proved surprisingly willing to adopt Copernican computational methods while maintaining theological reservations about the moving Earth. Italian universities, with their strong traditions of mathematical astronomy, provided another crucial center of Copernican influence. The University of Bologna, where Copernicus had studied with Navarra, became particularly important in training the next generation of heliocentric astronomers. England proved remarkably receptive to Copernican ideas, despite its relative isolation from continental scholarly networks. Thomas Digges, an English mathematician and astronomer, not only accepted the heliocentric theory, but extended it in revolutionary directions. In 1576, he published a translation of the cosmological sections of De Revolutionibus, accompanied by a remarkable diagram showing the stars scattered throughout infinite space, rather than confined to a single celestial sphere. This vision of an infinite universe filled with countless stars was perhaps even more radical than Copernicus's original proposal, and it would profoundly influence later astronomical thought. The practical applications of Copernican astronomy extended far beyond the academic world of universities and observatories. Navigation, increasingly important as European powers established global trading networks and colonial empires, required accurate astronomical calculations. The improved precision of Copernican-based tables made them valuable tools for sailors and cartographers, regardless of their theoretical beliefs about cosmic structure. Calendar reform, a pressing issue for both Catholic and Protestant churches, also benefited from Copernican computational methods. The Gregorian calendar, promulgated by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582, relied heavily on astronomical calculations derived from Copernican principles. Military applications provided another avenue for the spread of heliocentric ideas. Artillery, the dominant military technology of the 16th century, required mathematical expertise for effective use. Many of the mathematicians employed by princes and generals to calculate cannon trajectories were also competent astronomers who appreciated the elegance of Copernican theory. Through these practical channels, heliocentric concepts penetrated into social circles that might otherwise have remained hostile to astronomical innovation. The printing revolution that had made De Revolutionibus possible continued to amplify Copernican influence throughout the later 16th century. Popular astronomical textbooks began to present heliocentric theory as a legitimate alternative to traditional geocentric models, even when their authors remained personally uncommitted to the moving Earth. This neutral presentation allowed readers to encounter Copernican ideas without the theological and philosophical baggage that had initially hindered their acceptance. Gradually, heliocentrism began to seem less like dangerous heresy and more like interesting hypothesis. The emergence of new astronomical instruments also played a crucial role in validating Copernican theory. The development of more precise observational tools allowed astronomers to detect phenomena that geocentric models could not easily explain, but that followed naturally from heliocentric principles. The discovery of the phases of Venus, the moons of Jupiter, and the detailed structure of the Milky Way would eventually provide overwhelming evidence for the Copernican worldview, though these observations lay beyond the technological capabilities of Copernicus's own era. Perhaps most importantly, the generation following Copernicus witnessed the emergence of a new conception of scientific method that was perfectly suited to evaluating heliocentric claims. Francis Bacon's empirical philosophy and Galileo's mathematical approach to natural philosophy provided intellectual frameworks that emphasized observation, experiment, and mathematical analysis over traditional appeals to ancient authority. Within these new methodological contexts, Copernican astronomy appeared not as dangerous innovation, but as exemplary science. The social and cultural impact of Copernican ideas extended far beyond the technical details of planetary theory. The concept of a moving Earth challenged fundamental assumptions about humanity's place in creation that had shaped European thought for over a millennium. If Earth was merely one planet among others, what did this imply about human uniqueness and divine providence? If the universe was vastly larger than previously imagined, how could traditional concepts of heaven and hell be maintained? These questions, barely articulated in Copernicus's own time, would become central concerns for philosophers, theologians, and poets in the centuries that followed. The literary response to Copernican astronomy revealed the profound cultural anxieties generated by the new cosmology. John Donne's famous lament that "the new philosophy calls all in doubt" captured the sense of intellectual vertigo experienced by educated Europeans as traditional certainties crumbled around them. Yet the same period also produced works like Edmund Spenser's Fairy Queen and William Shakespeare's plays that incorporated Copernican imagery and themes, suggesting that the new astronomy could be a source of creative inspiration as well as philosophical confusion. The political implications of heliocentric theory proved equally complex and far-reaching. Absolute monarchs who claimed to rule by divine right found the Copernican cosmos uncomfortably democratic in its implications. If Earth was not the fixed center of creation, but a wandering planet subject to the same laws as other celestial bodies, what did this suggest about the stability of earthly hierarchies? Revolutionary movements in later centuries would explicitly invoke Copernican imagery to justify political change, arguing that just as astronomy had overthrown false authorities, so political reform must sweep away obsolete institutions. The economic consequences of the Copernican revolution were perhaps less obvious, but ultimately no less significant. The improved navigation techniques made possible by heliocentric astronomy facilitated the global expansion of European commerce and colonization. The scientific method pioneered by Copernican astronomers would eventually generate the technological innovations that powered the Industrial Revolution. The educational reforms required to teach the new astronomy helped create the literate, numerate populations necessary for modern economic development. By 1600, barely 6 decades after Copernicus's death, the intellectual landscape of Europe had been fundamentally transformed. What had begun as the private speculation of an obscure Polish canon had become the foundation for a new understanding of nature, humanity, and God. The heliocentric theory was no longer the eccentric hypothesis of a single individual, but the working assumption of the most advanced thinkers of the age. The revolution that Copernicus had feared to unleash was now unstoppable, yet the full implications of the Copernican breakthrough remained to be discovered. The 17th century would witness even more dramatic developments as Kepler refined planetary theory, Galileo revealed new celestial phenomena through his telescope, and Newton provided the mathematical framework that would govern astronomical thinking for the next 3 centuries. Each of these later achievements built upon the foundation that Copernicus had established, confirming his insight that the key to understanding the cosmos lay in recognizing Earth's motion through space. The man himself had become a legend, his name synonymous with revolutionary change in any field of human endeavour. To speak of a Copernican revolution in politics, religion, philosophy, or science was to invoke the memory of the quiet scholar who had dared to challenge the most fundamental assumptions of his age. The tower room in Frombork, where he had laboured in solitude, became a shrine to the power of individual genius to transform human understanding. But perhaps the most fitting memorial to Nicolaus Copernicus was not any physical monument, but the continuing vitality of the scientific tradition he had helped to establish. The methods of careful observation, mathematical analysis, and theoretical speculation that he had pioneered would generate discovery after discovery in the centuries that followed. From the detection of stellar parallax that finally proved Earth's motion to the recent discovery of thousands of planets orbiting other stars, each new astronomical breakthrough validated the essential insight that had driven the Frombork canon to his revolutionary conclusions. The universe revealed by modern astronomy bears little resemblance to the cosmos that Copernicus imagined. We now know that the Sun itself is merely one star among hundreds of billions in a galaxy that is itself one among countless others scattered throughout space and time on scales that dwarf even the expanded cosmos of the 16th century. Yet the fundamental principle that Copernicus established, that Earth holds no privileged position in the cosmic scheme, remains the cornerstone of all serious astronomical thinking. In this sense, the Copernican revolution continues to unfold in our own time, as each new discovery reinforces the lesson that human beings inhabit an ordinary world orbiting an ordinary star in an ordinary galaxy. The humility that Copernicus taught us about our cosmic significance has proven to be not a source of despair, but of liberation, freeing us from parochial assumptions and opening our minds to the genuine wonders of the universe we actually inhabit. The story of Nicolaus Copernicus is ultimately the story of how a single human mind, armed with nothing more than careful observation, mathematical reasoning, and intellectual courage, can reshape humanity's understanding of reality itself. In an age when we face challenges that require similar combinations of scientific insight and moral determination, the example of the Polish canon who moved the earth remains as relevant and inspiring as ever. The legacy of Copernicus was destined to unfold in ways that even his revolutionary mind could never have imagined. As the 16th century drew to a close, a new generation of astronomers emerged who would take his heliocentric foundation and build upon its structures of knowledge that would dwarf even his boldest speculations. These men possessed something that Copernicus had lacked: instruments of unprecedented precision that could peer deeper into the heavens than any human eye had ever seen before. In the imperial court of Prague, a strange and brilliant German mathematician named Johannes Kepler was wrestling with observational data that defied every attempt at explanation within the framework of perfect circular motions. Kepler had inherited from his mentor Tycho Brahe the most accurate planetary observations ever recorded, measurements so precise that they revealed tiny discrepancies between theory and reality that previous astronomers had been forced to ignore. Working with an almost mystical faith in the mathematical harmony of creation, Kepler would eventually abandon the ancient obsessions with circular perfection and discover that planets moved in elliptical orbits around the Sun. This breakthrough represented something far more radical than even Copernicus had dared to propose. Not only was the Earth displaced from the center of the universe, but the very notion of uniform circular motion, which had governed astronomical thinking since the time of Aristotle, was revealed to be a beautiful illusion. The planets swept through space in oval paths, speeding up as they approached the Sun, and slowing down as they receded, following mathematical laws that related their orbital periods to their distances with crystalline precision. Meanwhile, in the Italian city of Padua, where Copernicus had once studied medicine, Another revolutionary was preparing to shatter the last defences of the ancient worldview. Galileo Galilei had heard rumours of a remarkable Dutch invention, a device that used curved glass lenses to make distant objects appear closer and larger. Working with characteristic ingenuity, Galileo improved upon these crude telescopes and became the first human being to systematically study the heavens with artificial enhancement of his vision. What he saw through his telescope in those first magical nights of 1609 and 1610 provided the final proof that the Copernican cosmos was not merely mathematically convenient but physically real. The moon, which poets had celebrated for its perfect smoothness, revealed itself to be a rugged world of mountains and craters, scarred by impacts and geological processes that made it startlingly similar to Earth. The Milky Way, that mysterious band of light that had puzzled observers since antiquity, dissolved under telescopic scrutiny into countless individual stars, suggesting a universe far vaster and more populous than anyone had previously dared to imagine. But it was Galileo's discovery of 4 moons orbiting Jupiter that delivered the most devastating blow to geocentric astronomy. Here was undeniable proof that not everything in the heavens revolved around the Earth. These Medicean stars, as Galileo diplomatically named them in honour of his Florentine patrons, provided a perfect miniature model of the Copernican solar system, complete with satellites that faithfully followed their primary as it wandered among the constellations. Even more dramatically, Galileo's telescope revealed that Venus went through phases like the moon, changing from a thin crescent to a full disk and back again as it orbited the Sun. This phenomenon, invisible to naked eye observers but predicted by Copernican theory, could not be explained by any geocentric model. The phases of Venus provided smoking gun evidence that at least one planet definitely orbited the Sun, making it impossible to maintain that all celestial motions were centered on the Earth. The reaction to these telescopic discoveries was swift and polarized. Progressive astronomers and mathematicians embraced the new observations as final confirmation of truths that Copernicus had glimpsed through pure mathematical reasoning. Conservative scholars and theologians, however, saw in Galileo's telescope not an instrument of enlightenment, but a device of deception that created artificial images designed to support dangerous heresies. The Catholic Church, which had initially tolerated Copernican astronomy as mathematical hypothesis, now faced a crisis that demanded decisive action. The telescopic discoveries made it impossible to treat heliocentrism as mere computational convenience. Either the Earth really moved around the Sun, or the most advanced observational instruments of the age were systematically deceiving their users. There was no middle ground between these alternatives. The trial of Galileo in 1633 marked the moment when the Copernican revolution collided head-on with institutional religious authority. The Inquisition forced the aging scientist to recant his support for the motion of the Earth, placing him under house arrest for the remainder of his life, and adding De Revolutionibus to the index of forbidden books. Yet this apparent victory for geocentric orthodoxy proved pyrrhic in the extreme. The very drama of the confrontation focused international attention on astronomical questions and convinced educated Europeans that the Church was attempting to suppress obvious truths. The scientific revolution that Copernicus had initiated was now unstoppable. In Protestant countries where papal authority carried no weight, astronomers and natural philosophers embraced heliocentric principles with increasing confidence. Even in Catholic territories, educated elites often distinguished between public conformity to religious doctrine and private acceptance of scientific evidence. The underground circulation of banned astronomical works ensured that Copernican ideas continued to spread despite official prohibition. The mathematical framework established by Copernicus and refined by Kepler created the foundation for an even more revolutionary development that would complete the transformation of natural philosophy. Isaac Newton, working in the intellectual freedom of post-revolutionary England, recognized that the same mathematical laws that governed planetary motions also applied to terrestrial phenomena like falling apples and ocean tides. Newton's Principia Mathematica, published in 1687, provided the grand synthesis that unified celestial and terrestrial physics under a single set of mathematical principles. The law of universal gravitation explained not only why planets orbited the Sun in elliptical paths, but also why objects fell toward the Earth's surface, why the Moon's gravity caused tides, and why comets followed predictable trajectories through the solar system. For the first time in human history, a single mathematical theory could account for virtually all observed motions in the physical universe. This Newtonian synthesis represented the ultimate vindication of the Copernican approach to natural philosophy. The same mathematical methods that had revealed the sun-centered structure of the solar system now proved capable of explaining phenomena ranging from the precession of Mercury's orbit to the shape of the Earth itself. The universe emerged from Newton's work as a vast machine governed by precise mathematical laws that human reason could discover and understand. The implications extended far beyond astronomy and physics. If mathematical analysis could reveal the hidden laws governing planetary motions, might similar methods unlock the secrets of chemistry, biology, psychology, and human society? The 18th century witnessed an explosion of confidence in human reason that directly traced its lineage to the astronomical discoveries pioneered by Copernicus. Philosophers like Voltaire and Diderot celebrated Newton as the prophet of a new age in which superstition would yield to science and arbitrary authority would crumble before the advance of knowledge. The Enlightenment's faith in progress, reason, and human dignity drew much of its inspiration from the spectacular success of mathematical astronomy in revealing the true structure of the cosmos. Yet the cultural impact of the Copernican revolution extended far beyond the optimistic rationalism of Enlightenment philosophy. Romantic poets and artists found in the new astronomy a source of sublime terror as well as intellectual excitement. The infinite spaces that had frightened Pascal continued to haunt the European imagination, generating both cosmic poetry and existential anxiety about humanity's significance in an apparently indifferent universe. The religious response to Copernican astronomy evolved in complex and sometimes surprising directions. While some theologians continued to defend geocentric literalism, others found in the new cosmology evidence of divine wisdom and power that exceeded all previous imagination. The intricate mathematical laws that governed planetary motions seemed to reveal a creator whose intelligence surpassed human comprehension. Natural theology, which sought to demonstrate God's existence through the study of nature, found rich material in the elegant mathematical structures discovered by astronomers. The practical consequences of the Copernican revolution proved equally far-reaching. Improved understanding of celestial mechanics enabled more accurate navigation, facilitating the global expansion of European commerce and colonization. The scientific method pioneered by astronomers gradually spread to other fields of inquiry, generating the technological innovations that would eventually power the Industrial Revolution. Educational institutions throughout Europe were forced to revise their curricula to accommodate the new astronomy. Medieval scholastic methods, which had emphasized the memorization of ancient authorities, gave way to approaches that stressed observation, experiment, and mathematical analysis. The university system itself was transformed as natural philosophy emerged as an independent discipline with its own methods and standards of evidence. The democratization of astronomical knowledge through popular books, lectures, and demonstrations helped create an educated public that was comfortable with scientific reasoning and skeptical of traditional authorities. This cultural shift would prove crucial to the political revolutions of the late 18th and early 19th centuries, as populations that had learned to question cosmological orthodoxies proved willing to challenge political and social hierarchies as well. The 19th century brought new astronomical discoveries that further validated and extended Copernican principles. The detection of stellar parallax finally provided direct proof of Earth's orbital motion, confirming what Copernicus had predicted 3 centuries earlier. The discovery of Neptune through mathematical analysis of Uranus's orbit demonstrated the predictive power of Newtonian mechanics. Spectroscopic analysis revealed that the Sun and stars were composed of the same chemical elements found on Earth, reinforcing the Copernican insight that celestial and terrestrial realms obeyed the same natural laws. As the 20th century dawned, astronomers began to realize that even the expanded cosmos revealed by telescopic observation represented only a tiny fraction of physical reality. The Milky Way, long thought to encompass the entire universe, proved to be merely one galaxy among billions scattered throughout space, on scales that dwarfed even the boldest speculations of earlier centuries. The universe itself appeared to be expanding, carrying distant galaxies away from us at velocities that approach the speed of light. These discoveries, culminating in our current understanding of cosmic evolution from an initial Big Bang through billions of years of stellar and galactic formation, represent the ultimate extension of the intellectual revolution that Copernicus had initiated. Each new revelation about the nature and scale of the universe has reinforced his fundamental insight that Earth occupies no privileged position in the cosmic scheme. The search for planets orbiting other stars, which remained purely speculative until the 1990s, has now revealed thousands of worlds circling distant suns. Many of these exoplanets appear to be Earth-like worlds that might harbour conditions suitable for life. The possibility that we share the universe with countless other forms of intelligence represents the latest chapter in the ongoing expansion of cosmic perspective that began with the Polish canon's mathematical analysis of planetary motions. Modern space exploration has provided the most dramatic vindication imaginable of Copernican principles. Human beings have literally left Earth's surface and observed our planet from space, seeing with their own eyes the blue marble that Copernicus could only envision through mathematical reasoning. Robotic spacecraft have visited every planet in the solar system, confirming that they are indeed worlds in their own right, rather than mere points of light wandering against the stellar background. The technological civilization that makes such achievements possible owes its existence to the scientific revolution that Copernicus initiated. The same mathematical methods that revealed the structure of the solar system now govern everything from computer design to genetic engineering. The intellectual courage required to challenge fundamental assumptions about reality remains as relevant in the 21st century as it was in the 16th. Yet perhaps the most profound legacy of Nicolaus Copernicus lies not in any specific scientific discovery, but in the example he provided of how individual human beings can transform our understanding of reality through careful observation, rigorous reasoning, and moral courage. In an age when we face global challenges that require similar combinations of scientific insight and ethical determination, the memory of the quiet scholar who dared to move the earth continues to inspire those who seek truth despite the risks of challenging conventional wisdom. The tower room in Frombork, where Copernicus conducted his observations, has long since crumbled, but the intellectual edifice he constructed there remains more solid than any physical monument. Every time a student learns that Earth orbits the Sun, every time a spacecraft navigates by the laws of celestial mechanics, every time a scientist questions established authority in the name of empirical truth, the spirit of the Polish astronomer lives on. The revolution he began with such trepidation has become the foundation of modern civilization, proving that ideas born in solitude can indeed change the world. The earth still moves, as Galileo is said to have muttered after his forced recantation, and with it moves all of human knowledge toward destinations that Copernicus could never have imagined, but would surely have celebrated. In the end, the complete life of Nicolaus Copernicus can be measured not in the 70 years he spent on Earth, but in the 5 centuries his ideas have shaped human thought. The shy canon who feared to publish his discoveries during his lifetime achieved an immortality that no earthly fame could have provided, becoming forever identified with humanity's greatest intellectual adventure, the quest to understand our true place in the cosmic order. The posthumous journey of De Revolutionibus through the corridors of power and learning revealed the complex machinery by which revolutionary ideas either triumph or perish in the crucible of human institutions. Within the Vatican itself, a quiet drama was unfolding that would determine whether Copernican astronomy lived or died in the Catholic world. Pope Paul III, to whom Copernicus had dedicated his great work, was no enemy of learning. A Renaissance humanist who had surrounded himself with scholars and artists, he represented the tradition of papal patronage that had nurtured intellectual innovation throughout the 15th and early 16th centuries. The initial Vatican response to De Revolutionibus was measured, almost cautious. Church officials recognized the mathematical sophistication of the work, while remaining uncertain about its theological implications. Cardinal Giovanni Maria Ciocchi del Monte, who would later become Pope Julius III, convened informal discussions among Vatican astronomers and theologians to assess the new theory. These learned men found themselves grappling with questions that had no precedent in Christian scholarship. If the Earth truly moved around the Sun, how should one interpret biblical passages that seem to assume geocentric cosmology? Was it possible to maintain the truth of Scripture while accepting the mathematical demonstrations of Copernican astronomy? The answers that emerged from these early Vatican deliberations reflected the intellectual sophistication of Renaissance Catholicism. Many church scholars argued that biblical language should be understood as accommodating human perception rather than teaching cosmological truth. When Scripture spoke of sunrise and sunset, it described phenomena as they appeared to earthly observers, not as they existed in absolute reality. This principle of accommodation, which had ancient roots in patristic theology, provided a potential bridge between heliocentric astronomy and Christian doctrine. More troubling were the philosophical implications of the moving earth. Medieval theology had constructed an elaborate cosmological system that placed humanity at the physical and moral center of creation. Hell lay beneath the earth's surface, heaven beyond the sphere of fixed stars, and the various celestial spheres served as dwelling places for angels and blessed souls. If Earth became merely one planet among others, this entire spiritual geography would require fundamental reconstruction. Some theologians found this prospect liberating rather than threatening. Father Christopher Clavius, the brilliant Jesuit mathematician who would later help design the Gregorian calendar, argued that a larger universe actually magnified rather than diminished divine glory. If God had created countless worlds, and perhaps countless forms of life, this demonstrated infinite creative power rather than cosmic parsimony. The heliocentric theory, properly understood, revealed divine majesty on a scale that previous generations had never imagined. The Protestant response to Copernican astronomy followed different patterns that reflected the theological priorities of the Reformation. Luther and Calvin, focused on returning Christianity to its biblical foundations, were deeply suspicious of any innovation that seemed to contradict scriptural authority. The Catholic Church might accommodate human reason to divine revelation, but Protestant reformers insisted on the absolute primacy of Scripture in all matters touching on truth. This biblical literalism created immediate problems for Protestant reception of heliocentric theory. the Old Testament clearly described Joshua commanding the sun to stand still, not the earth to cease its rotation. The psalmist celebrated a God who had established the earth so firmly that it could never be moved. For Protestant theologians committed to scriptural inerrancy, these passages seem to provide definitive refutation of Copernican claims. Yet Protestant universities, particularly in Germany, proved remarkably receptive to Copernican computational methods, even when their faculties rejected heliocentric cosmology. The University of Wittenberg, despite being the intellectual heart of Lutheranism, became a major centre for astronomical education based on Copernican principles. This paradox reflected the practical orientation of Protestant education, which valued useful knowledge even when it conflicted with theological orthodoxy. The key figure in this development was Philip Melanchthon, Luther's closest collaborator and the architect of Protestant educational reform. Melanchthon recognized that Copernican astronomy, whatever its cosmological implications, provided superior tools for astronomical calculation. The Prussian tables compiled by Erasmus Reinhold represented a significant advance in computational accuracy that could benefit both secular and religious applications. Melanchthon's solution was to embrace Copernican methods while rejecting Copernican cosmology. Students at Wittenberg learned to calculate planetary positions using heliocentric models while maintaining belief in the Earth's immobility. This compartmentalization of mathematical technique and physical theory allowed Protestant astronomers to benefit from Copernican innovations without challenging biblical authority. The spread of this pragmatic approach throughout Protestant Europe created a generation of astronomers who were thoroughly familiar with heliocentric calculations, but remained officially uncommitted to heliocentric cosmology. When later discoveries provided overwhelming evidence for Earth's motion, these scholars were intellectually prepared to abandon geocentric theory despite their theological reservations. The imperial court of Charles V, ruler of the Holy Roman Empire and defender of Catholic orthodoxy throughout Europe, provided another crucial venue for early discussions of Copernican theory. Charles maintained a court astronomer, Johannes Stoeffler, who was among the first to receive copies of De Revolutionibus. Stoeffler's initial assessment was cautiously positive, praising the mathematical innovations while expressing uncertainty about the physical claims. Charles himself, despite his reputation as a conservative defender of traditional authority, showed surprising interest in astronomical questions. The emperor's vast domains required accurate calendrical calculations for administrative purposes, and the improved precision of Copernican methods offered practical advantages that transcended theological concerns. Imperial bureaucrats quietly began incorporating Copernican calculations into their work, while avoiding public statements about cosmological questions. This pattern of practical adoption, coupled with theoretical agnosticism, became common throughout 16th century Europe. Navigators used improved astronomical tables without concerning themselves with the theoretical foundations of the calculations. Military engineers employed mathematicians trained in Copernican methods to calculate artillery trajectories. Physicians continued to cast horoscopes using computational techniques derived from heliocentric astronomy. The printing industry played a crucial role in disseminating Copernican ideas beyond the narrow circle of professional astronomers. Publishers discovered that books on mathematical astronomy, despite their technical difficulty, found ready markets among educated elites seeking to understand the latest intellectual developments. Simplified presentations of heliocentric theory began appearing in the vernacular languages, making Copernican concepts accessible to readers who could not master the Latin mathematics of the original treatise. Popular astronomical textbooks of the later 16th century typically presented multiple cosmological systems as competing hypotheses rather than defending any single view as definitively true. This neutral approach allowed readers to encounter Copernican ideas without feeling compelled to accept or reject them immediately. The gradual familiarization of educated Europeans with heliocentric concepts prepared the ground for their eventual acceptance when telescopic discoveries provided compelling evidence. The university system underwent significant changes as Copernican astronomy gained influence among mathematical faculties. Traditional astronomical education had emphasized the memorization of ancient authorities and the mechanical application of computational rules. The Copernican approach required students to understand the geometric principles underlying planetary theory, fostering mathematical sophistication that extended far beyond astronomy. Students trained in Copernican methods developed analytical skills that proved valuable in many fields beyond celestial mechanics. The geometric reasoning required to understand planetary motions translated readily to problems in military engineering, architecture, cartography, and navigation. Universities that embraced the new astronomy found their graduates in high demand throughout European courts and commercial centres. The transformation of mathematical education also reflected broader cultural changes associated with Renaissance humanism. The medieval trivium of grammar, rhetoric, and logic gave way to curricula that emphasized mathematical analysis and empirical observation. Students learned to question traditional authorities and evaluate competing hypotheses based on observational evidence rather than textual authority. This methodological revolution extended far beyond astronomy, influencing approaches to medicine, natural history, mechanics, and even theology. The critical spirit fostered by Copernican astronomy contributed to the broader intellectual ferment that would eventually generate the scientific revolution of the 17th century. Students who learned to question Ptolemaic astronomy found it easier to challenge other ancient authorities in medicine, physics, and natural philosophy. The economic implications of improved astronomical knowledge became increasingly apparent as European powers expanded their global reach. The Portuguese and Spanish empires, which depended on accurate navigation for their survival, quickly adopted whatever astronomical methods proved most reliable, regardless of their theoretical foundations. Christopher Columbus had navigated using medieval astronomical tables of notorious inaccuracy. By 1600, Spanish and Portuguese navigators routinely employed calculations based on Copernican principles. The commercial advantages of superior navigation techniques created powerful incentives for the adoption of heliocentric methods, even among nations whose official policies favored geocentric orthodoxy. Merchants who could navigate more accurately gained competitive advantages that translated directly into profits. Insurance companies that could better predict the timing of voyages offered lower premiums to captains who employed the most advanced astronomical techniques. These economic pressures gradually undermined official resistance to Copernican astronomy throughout Catholic Europe. Church authorities might condemn heliocentric theory in principle, but they could not prevent the practical adoption of superior computational methods by commercial and military interests. The result was a gradual separation between theoretical cosmology and practical astronomy that persisted well into the 17th century. The artistic and literary response to Copernican astronomy revealed the profound cultural impact of the new cosmology on European consciousness. Painters began incorporating astronomical imagery that reflected heliocentric concepts, often in subtle ways that avoided direct confrontation with religious authorities. The cosmic landscapes of Peter Bruegel the Elder and Giuseppe Arcimboldo suggested infinite vistas that exceeded the bounded universe of medieval imagination. Literary works of the late 16th century increasingly employed astronomical metaphors that assumed familiarity with Copernican concepts. Edmund Spenser's Faerie Queene contained numerous references to cosmic imagery, that would have been meaningless to readers unfamiliar with heliocentric theory. Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus explored themes of cosmic ambition and the dangers of forbidden knowledge that clearly reflected contemporary debates about astronomical innovation. The emergence of a distinctly modern literary sensibility during this period was closely connected to the cosmological revolution initiated by Copernicus. Writers who had absorbed the implications of a moving Earth found themselves inhabiting a universe that was simultaneously more magnificent and more terrifying than the cozy cosmos of their predecessors. This cosmic anxiety would reach its full expression in the metaphysical poetry of John Donne and the cosmic dramas of William Shakespeare. Musical composition also reflected the influence of Copernican astronomy through the development of increasingly complex harmonic structures that mirrored the mathematical relationships discovered in planetary motions. Composers like Orlando di Lasso and Giovanni Palestrina created polyphonic works whose intricate mathematical proportions echoed the celestial harmonies described in astronomical treatises. The music of the spheres, which had been a poetic metaphor for medieval composers, became a literal inspiration for Renaissance musicians familiar with the mathematical astronomy of Copernicus and his successors. The technological innovations required for advanced astronomical observation also generated broader scientific developments that extended far beyond astronomy. The precision instruments needed to measure planetary positions demanded advances in metalworking, lens grinding, and mechanical engineering that found applications in many other fields. Clockmaking, in particular, benefited enormously from the technical expertise developed by astronomical instrument makers. The social organization of scientific research began to change as astronomical problems became too complex for individual scholars working in isolation. The model established by Copernicus of a solitary genius developing revolutionary theories through decades of patient observation and calculation gave way to collaborative enterprises involving multiple observers, calculators, and instrument makers. This transition toward collective scientific endeavor would prove crucial for the accelerating pace of discovery in the 17th century. The emergence of scientific correspondence networks allowed astronomers throughout Europe to share observations, exchange calculations, and debate theoretical questions with unprecedented speed and sophistication. Jesuit colleges, with their international organization and high educational standards, played a particularly important role in facilitating these scholarly exchanges. The Jesuits' willingness to engage with Copernican astronomy, despite their ultimate rejection of heliocentric cosmology, helped maintain intellectual dialogue between Catholic and Protestant astronomical communities. The gradual accumulation of observational evidence favoring heliocentric theory created mounting pressure on traditional authorities to develop more sophisticated responses than simple rejection. Catholic theologians began exploring ways to reconcile Earth's motion with scriptural teaching, while Protestant scholars sought methods for maintaining biblical authority without rejecting obvious empirical truths. These theological innovations would prove crucial when telescopic discoveries made the evidence for heliocentrism overwhelming. By 1600, educated Europeans lived in a fundamentally different intellectual universe than their predecessors of 1500. The Quiet Revolution, initiated by a Polish canon, had transformed not just astronomical theory, but the entire framework within which natural philosophy operated. The mathematical approach pioneered by Copernicus had demonstrated its power to reveal hidden truths about physical reality, establishing quantitative analysis as the preferred method for investigating natural phenomena. The confidence in human reason generated by the success of Copernican astronomy would inspire the great philosophical systems of the 17th century. Thinkers like Francis Bacon, René Descartes, and Baruch Spinoza built their revolutionary approaches to knowledge on foundations laid by mathematical astronomers. The conviction that nature operated according to discoverable mathematical laws, which had emerged from the study of planetary motions, gradually extended to all branches of natural philosophy. The stage was now set for even more dramatic developments that would complete the transformation of European thought. As the 17th century dawned, new instruments were being developed that would allow human beings to see farther into space than ever before possible. The telescope, that revolutionary device that would soon transform astronomy from a mathematical discipline into an observational science, was already being perfected in the workshops of Dutch lens grinders. The man who would wield this new instrument most effectively was already at work in the Italian city of Padua, where Copernicus had once studied medicine. Galileo Galilei, professor of mathematics and devotee of Copernican astronomy, was preparing to turn his improved telescope toward the heavens and discover sights that would provide final, irrefutable proof that the Earth indeed moved around the Sun. The revolution that Copernicus had begun with such reluctance and trepidation was about to enter its most dramatic phase. The mathematical insights developed through pure reasoning were about to receive spectacular confirmation through direct observation. The cosmos that Copernicus had envisioned through the power of mathematical analysis was about to reveal itself to human eyes in all its magnificent reality. The age of modern astronomy was about to begin. About to begin. The dawn of the 17th century brought with it an invention that would forever alter humanity's relationship with the cosmos. In the workshops of Dutch spectacle makers, craftsmen experimenting with combinations of curved glass lenses had stumbled upon a device that could make distant objects appear dramatically closer. Word of this miraculous instrument spread quickly through the trading networks of Northern Europe, reaching the ears of natural philosophers who immediately grasped its revolutionary potential. Among those who heard these rumours was a mathematics professor at the University of Padua, a man whose restless intellect and fierce devotion to Copernican principles would soon make him the most celebrated and controversial figure in European astronomy. Galileo Galilei had spent years teaching the mathematical complexities of planetary theory to students who struggled to envision the cosmic dance described in their textbooks. Now, in the autumn of 1609, he held in his hands an instrument that would allow human beings to witness that dance directly. Galileo's first telescopes were crude affairs, magnifying objects by only 3 or 4 times their apparent size. But with characteristic ingenuity, he set about improving the design, grinding his own lenses and experimenting with different arrangements until he had created instruments capable of magnifying distant objects by 20 times or more. These represented the most powerful optical devices ever constructed, opening windows into realms that no human eye had ever explored. On the night of January 7, 1610, Galileo turned his improved telescope toward Jupiter and made a discovery that would shatter the last defences of geocentric astronomy. Near the bright disk of the planet, he observed 3 small stars arranged in a straight line, 2 to the east and 1 to the west. This configuration was curious enough to merit further observation, but what Galileo saw on successive nights defied every expectation based on traditional astronomical theory. The 3 small stars were moving in relation to Jupiter, sometimes appearing on one side of the planet, sometimes on the other, sometimes disappearing entirely behind the planet's disk. Within a few nights of observation, Galileo realized that he was witnessing something unprecedented in human experience. These were not stars at all, but satellites orbiting Jupiter just as the Moon orbited Earth. Soon he discovered a 4th satellite, giving Jupiter a complete system of moons that provided a perfect miniature model of the Copernican solar system. The implications were staggering and immediate. For 15 centuries, critics of heliocentric theory had argued that if Earth moved around the Sun, the Moon would be left behind in space. The the discovery of Jupiter's moons demonstrated conclusively that satellites could indeed accompany their primary bodies through space, maintaining their orbital relationships, even as the entire system moved through the heavens. The Earth-Moon system was not unique, but merely one example of a celestial arrangement that appeared to be common throughout the solar system. Even more devastating to geocentric astronomy was the simple fact that not everything in the heavens revolved around Earth. Here were four worlds that obviously circled Jupiter, following their own celestial choreography, completely independent of terrestrial concerns. The ancient assumption that Earth must be the center of all celestial motions crumbled before the evidence of direct observation. If Jupiter could serve as the center of orbital motion for its satellites, why could the Sun not serve the same role for the planets? Galileo's telescopic surveys revealed wonder after wonder that transformed humanity's understanding of the cosmos. The Moon, long celebrated by poets for its perfect smoothness and ethereal beauty, proved to be a rugged world of mountains, valleys, and vast circular plains that suggested geological processes similar to those operating on Earth. The Milky Way, that mysterious band of pale light that had puzzled observers since antiquity, resolved under telescopic scrutiny into countless individual stars, implying a universe far more populous than anyone had previously imagined. Venus provided the most decisive evidence for Copernican theory when Galileo observed it going through a complete cycle of phases similar to those of the Moon. In the geocentric system of Ptolemy, Venus should always appear as a crescent because it was supposed to remain between Earth and the Sun. But Galileo's telescope revealed Venus displaying every possible phase from thin crescent to full disk, exactly as predicted by a Copernican theory for a planet orbiting the Sun at a distance greater than Earth's. The phases of Venus constituted smoking gun evidence that was impossible to explain within any geocentric framework. Even the most ingenious defenders of traditional astronomy could devise no mechanism by which Venus could show a full phase if it remained between Earth and Sun. The telescopic observations provided mathematical proof that at least one planet definitely orbited the Sun, making it logically impossible to maintain that all celestial motions were centered on Earth. The reaction to these discoveries split along predictable lines that reflected the broader cultural and religious tensions convulsing early 17th century Europe. Progressive mathematicians and natural philosophers embraced the telescopic evidence as final vindication of truths that Copernicus had glimpsed through pure mathematical reasoning. Conservative scholars and religious authorities, however, refused to accept observations that contradicted fundamental principles they had spent lifetimes defending. Some critics argued that the telescope created artificial images rather than revealing genuine celestial phenomena. The instrument was new, its optical principles poorly understood, and its reliability unproven. How could anyone be certain that the moons of Jupiter were real rather than optical illusions produced by flawed lenses? The very idea that human vision could be artificially enhanced seemed to violate natural order in ways that made telescopic observations inherently suspect. Other opponents took a different approach, arguing that even if the telescopic discoveries were genuine, they proved nothing about the structure of the solar system. Perhaps God had indeed created moons around Jupiter and phases for Venus, but this did not necessarily mean that Earth moved around the Sun. The divine creation was vast and mysterious, containing wonders that exceeded human comprehension without necessarily conforming to human theories about cosmic organization. The most sophisticated resistance came from Jesuit astronomers who possessed the technical expertise to verify Galileo's observations while maintaining theological objections to their cosmological implications. Christopher Clavius and his colleagues at the Roman College confirmed the existence of Jupiter's moons and Venus's phases, but argued that these discoveries could be accommodated within modified geocentric systems that preserved Earth's central position while acknowledging the superiority of the Sun as the centre of planetary motions. These hybrid cosmologies, most notably the system proposed by Tycho Brahe, placed Earth at the centre of the universe, with the Sun and Moon orbiting around it, while having all the other planets orbit the Sun. This arrangement could account for the phases of Venus and the moons of Jupiter while maintaining Earth's immobility, offering a compromise that satisfied observational evidence without completely abandoning traditional principles. Yet for Galileo and the growing community of Copernican astronomers, such compromises represented intellectual cowardice in the face of overwhelming evidence. The telescopic discoveries had revealed a universe that operated according to uniform physical principles rather than arbitrary theological requirements. If Jupiter could serve as the centre of a satellite system while orbiting the Sun, then Earth could do the same. The mathematical elegance and observational confirmation of heliocentric theory made geocentric alternatives appear increasingly artificial and contrived. The cultural impact of the telescopic discoveries extended far beyond technical, astronomical debates. Europeans who had grown up imagining themselves at the centre of a cosy, bounded cosmos suddenly found themselves inhabitants of an apparently infinite universe filled with countless worlds. The psychological adjustment required to absorb this cosmic perspective proved traumatic for many, generating the existential anxiety that would characterize much of 17th century literature and philosophy. John Donne captured this sense of cosmic vertigo in his famous lament that the new philosophy calls all in doubt. The stable hierarchies of medieval cosmology, which had provided comforting analogies for social and political order, dissolved before the evidence of telescopic observation. If Earth was merely one planet among others, what did this imply about human uniqueness and divine providence? If the universe contained countless stars and possibly countless worlds, how could traditional concepts of salvation and damnation be maintained? Yet the same discoveries that generated anxiety also inspired unprecedented confidence in human reason and scientific method. The telescopic confirmation of mathematical predictions demonstrated that human intelligence could penetrate the deepest secrets of nature through careful observation and rigorous analysis. The success of Copernican astronomy suggested that no natural phenomenon lay beyond the reach of scientific investigation, fostering optimism about human capacity for understanding and controlling the physical world. The practical applications of telescopic astronomy quickly extended beyond pure research into areas of immediate economic and military importance. Improved understanding of celestial mechanics enabled more accurate navigation, benefiting the global trading networks that were transforming European economies. Military engineers discovered that telescopes could serve as reconnaissance instruments, allowing commanders to observe enemy positions from unprecedented distances. The optical principles underlying telescope construction also generated innovations in other fields requiring precision instruments. Clockmakers, surveying equipment manufacturers, and makers of scientific instruments all benefited from the advances in lens grinding and mechanical engineering that telescopic astronomy demanded. The technological spillover effects of astronomical research began to accelerate the broader process of scientific and industrial development. Educational institutions throughout Europe found themselves compelled to revise their curricula to accommodate the flood of new discoveries that telescopic observation was generating. Traditional astronomy courses based on memorizing ancient authorities became obsolete almost overnight. Students now needed to master observational techniques, understand optical principles, and develop the mathematical sophistication required to interpret complex data. The University of Padua, where Galileo conducted his most famous observations, became a magnet for students seeking the most advanced astronomical education available anywhere in Europe. Young scholars travelled from across the continent to learn telescopic methods and participate in the observational programs that were revolutionising natural philosophy. The university's international reputation attracted not just students, but also the financial support necessary to purchase expensive instruments and maintain sophisticated research facilities. Similar developments occurred at other European universities willing to embrace the new astronomy. The University of Prague, where Kepler was refining his mathematical analysis of planetary motions, established one of the first permanent astronomical observatories equipped with telescopic instruments. The University of Leiden in the Dutch Republic became another major centre for optical research, benefiting from the Netherlands' leadership in lens manufacturing and precision instrument making. The emergence of these institutional centres for astronomical research marked a fundamental transition in the organisation of scientific work. The model of the solitary genius labouring in isolation, exemplified by Copernicus in his tower at Frombork, gave way to collaborative enterprises involving teams of observers, calculators, and instrument makers. This transition toward collective scientific endeavour would prove crucial for the accelerating pace of discovery throughout the 17th century. Scientific correspondence networks expanded rapidly as astronomers shared telescopic discoveries and debated their implications with colleagues throughout Europe. The printing industry responded to growing demand for astronomical literature by producing increasingly sophisticated technical works that disseminated the latest discoveries to educated audiences. Popular accounts of telescopic wonders found eager readers among urban elites, fascinated by revelations about the nature of the cosmos. The Catholic Church faced mounting pressure to develop an official position on telescopic discoveries that could no longer be ignored or dismissed. The Roman Inquisition, established to combat Protestant heresy, found itself grappling with scientific questions that had no precedent in ecclesiastical law. How should church authorities respond to observational evidence that seemed to confirm theories previously tolerated only as mathematical hypotheses? The trial of Galileo, which would reach its climax in 1633, represented the moment when institutional religious authority collided directly with the advancing front of scientific discovery. The outcome of this confrontation would determine whether the Catholic Church could accommodate scientific progress or would position itself as an opponent of empirical truth. The stakes extended far beyond astronomy to encompass the entire relationship between faith and reason in European civilization. Protestant responses to the telescopic discoveries followed different patterns that reflected the theological priorities established during the Reformation. Lutheran and Calvinist scholars, committed to biblical literalism, generally proved more resistant to heliocentrism than their Catholic counterparts. Yet the practical benefits of improved astronomical methods created the same pressures for adoption in Protestant territories that operated throughout Catholic Europe. The Dutch Republic, with its tradition of religious tolerance and commercial pragmatism, emerged as a crucial haven for scientific research that might encounter difficulties elsewhere. Dutch universities and scientific societies welcomed scholars whose investigations had generated controversy in other countries, creating an environment where telescopic astronomy could flourish without theological interference. The economic prosperity of the Netherlands also supported the development of the most advanced optical industry in Europe. Dutch lens grinders achieved levels of precision that enabled the construction of increasingly powerful telescopes, while Dutch instrument makers produced the mechanical devices necessary for precise astronomical observation. This combination of intellectual freedom and technical capability made the Dutch Republic the natural centre for European astronomy during much of the 17th century. English natural philosophers, working within a Protestant culture that was nevertheless more flexible than continental Lutheranism, developed their own distinctive approaches to telescopic astronomy. The Royal Society of London, established in 1660, became one of the first scientific institutions dedicated to promoting empirical investigation through collaborative research. English astronomers like Thomas Harriot and William Lower conducted some of the earliest telescopic observations outside Italy, confirming and extending Galileo's discoveries. The island geography of England provided certain advantages for astronomical observation, as maritime locations often offered clearer skies than continental sites affected by atmospheric pollution from urban centres. English astronomers also benefited from their nation's growing naval power, which provided opportunities for telescopic observations from ships at sea and from remote colonial outposts, where atmospheric conditions were often superior to those available in Europe. The integration of telescopic discoveries into the broader intellectual framework of European thought required fundamental revisions in philosophy, theology, and natural science. The medieval synthesis of Aristotelian physics and Christian doctrine, which had dominated European universities for 3 centuries, proved inadequate to accommodate the new observational evidence. Entirely new approaches to understanding nature and humanity's place within it had to be developed. Francis Bacon's empirical philosophy provided one influential framework for interpreting the significance of telescopic discoveries. Bacon argued that genuine knowledge could only be obtained through systematic observation and experimentation rather than through appeals to ancient authorities or abstract reasoning. The success of telescopic astronomy in revealing previously unknown celestial phenomena seemed to vindicate this empirical approach and encouraged its application to other branches of natural philosophy. René Descartes developed a different but equally revolutionary approach that emphasized mathematical analysis as the key to understanding natural phenomena. Cartesian philosophy sought to explain all physical processes through mechanical principles that could be expressed in precise mathematical terms. The mathematical elegance of Copernican astronomy provided a perfect example of how quantitative methods could reveal the hidden order underlying apparently chaotic natural phenomena. The philosophical implications of telescopic discoveries extended beyond questions of scientific method to fundamental issues about the nature of reality and human knowledge. If human senses could be artificially enhanced to perceive previously invisible phenomena, what did this suggest about the relationship between appearance and reality? How could anyone be certain that telescopic observations reveal genuine features of the external world rather than artifacts created by the optical instruments themselves? These epistemological questions would occupy philosophers for centuries, generating debates about the reliability of sensory experience and the foundations of scientific knowledge that continue to this day. The telescope had not merely revealed new facts about the universe, it had fundamentally challenged traditional assumptions about how human beings could gain reliable knowledge about the world around them. The artistic response to telescopic discoveries reflected both the wonder and the anxiety that these revelations generated among educated Europeans. Painters began incorporating astronomical imagery that suggested infinite cosmic vistas extending far beyond the bounded universe of medieval imagination. The cosmic landscapes of Adam Elsheimer and Peter Paul Rubens captured the sublime terror of contemplating humanity's position within an apparently limitless cosmos. Literary works of the early 17th century increasingly employed astronomical metaphors that assumed reader familiarity with telescopic discoveries. John Milton's Paradise Lost, composed later in the century, demonstrated how thoroughly astronomical imagery had penetrated European literary consciousness. Milton's cosmic geography reflected contemporary understanding of an infinite universe populated by countless worlds, each potentially harboring its own forms of life and intelligence. The emergence of distinctly modern literary sensibility during this period was intimately connected to the cosmological revolution initiated by Copernicus and confirmed by telescopic observation. Writers who had absorbed the implications of living in an infinite universe, inhabited by countless worlds, found themselves exploring themes of cosmic loneliness, human insignificance, and the search for meaning in an apparently indifferent cosmos. Musical composition also reflected the influence of the new astronomy through increasingly complex harmonic structures that mirrored the mathematical relationships governing planetary motions. Composers familiar with Kepler's work on celestial harmonies created polyphonic compositions whose intricate mathematical proportions echoed the cosmic music that astronomical calculations had revealed. The literal music of the spheres, long relegated to poetic metaphor, became a source of inspiration for composers seeking to express the mathematical beauty of the universe in audible form. As the 17th century progressed, the accumulation of telescopic discoveries made resistance to Copernican principles increasingly untenable. Each new observation seemed to confirm predictions derived from heliocentric theory, while creating additional difficulties for geocentric alternatives. The weight of empirical evidence gradually overwhelmed theological and philosophical objections, forcing even the most conservative authorities to acknowledge the reality of Earth's motion through space. The transformation of European thought during this period represented one of the most profound intellectual revolutions in human history. Within the span of a single century, educated Europeans had moved from inhabiting a small, Earth-centered cosmos to recognizing themselves as residents of an ordinary planet orbiting an ordinary star in what appeared to be an infinite universe. This cosmological revolution generated corresponding transformations in philosophy, theology, literature, art, and virtually every other domain of human culture. Yet the ultimate significance of the Copernican revolution extended beyond its specific astronomical discoveries to encompass the methodological innovations that had made those discoveries possible. The combination of mathematical analysis and empirical observation, pioneered by Copernicus and perfected by his successors, established the foundation for modern scientific method. This intellectual framework would prove capable of generating discoveries and technological innovations that exceeded even the boldest speculations of 17th century natural philosophers. And so we reach the end of our journey through the extraordinary life of Nicolaus Copernicus, the quiet canon who changed everything. From that moment in 1543, when he held his revolutionary book on his deathbed, we have traced the path of an idea that transformed not just astronomy, but humanity's entire understanding of its place in the cosmos. Copernicus gave us more than a new model of planetary motion. He gave us the courage to question fundamental assumptions about reality itself. His legacy lives on every time we dare to challenge conventional wisdom in the pursuit of truth. The Earth still moves, and with it, the endless human quest for knowledge continues.